Morning everybody, I hope you're well and you had a good weekend and enjoyed the sunshine. So today's assembly starts with a riddle, and I've got just one clue in my riddle and I want you to see if you can work out the answer. So here's the clue for the riddle. What instrument can you hear but not touch or see? I'll read it again as you get thinking. What instrument can you hear but not touch or see? If you want to have some guesses in your class now, pause the video and have a quick discussion and see if you can place your guesses as to what the answer to the riddle is. Pause it now. Okay, so I wonder what you came up with. I do wish we were all in the hall together and I could hear your guesses. So I'll reveal the answer. So the instrument you can hear but not touch or see is our voice. Our voice is a type of instrument. We can make all sorts of sounds with our voice, but it's not an instrument we can see, like a drum kit, like Mrs. Robinson played in the music assembly last week. It's not like the instruments of the orchestra, like violins and cellos and flutes and oboes and trumpets. And it's not like the piano that we have in the hall. All those things that we can feel, we can touch, and we can see. Our voice is made with our vocal cords and the air that vibrates right at the back of our throat. So we can't see it, can we? Well, only if you use a very special camera, you can see it then. But that's something that is not a normal thing, an everyday thing, to be able to see our voice. Now, I think our voices are amazing. They do many wonderful things. We can use our voices to be loud. We can use our voices to be quiet. We can use our voices to talk very, very high, like I did when I was being Shirley Bear. And we can use our voices to talk very, very low. So we can change the pitch, we can change the volume or the dynamics. We can use our voices to sing and to cheer ourselves up often when we're singing. We can use our voices to communicate all sorts of things. And we use them all day for many different purposes. What an amazing thing, hey? I want us to think today, particularly, about how we use our voices to help and the best ways we could use our voices in school. So let's just start with this question. What are the positive things we can do with our voices? What are the good things? What are the good impact? What are the things that have a good impact that we can do with our voices? I'd like you to have a conversation now in your classes where you think about the good ways we can use our voices. So pause the video now and have that conversation. Okay, so I wonder what you came up with. Perhaps you talked about kind words and compliments, kind things that we can say to other people. Perhaps you talked about how you could cheer other people up when you check in with them and see if they're okay. Perhaps you talked about the positive way you can contribute to learning by getting involved in class discussions and getting involved in your learning by sharing your thinking and sharing your answers. There are probably other things that you talked about because there's many positive things we can do with our voices. And of course, as I've already mentioned, we can use our voices to speak, but also to sing. And singing is a positive thing for many people. It can make us feel good. It can release hormones that actually cheer ourselves up and make us feel better. But also lots of people enjoy listening to singing. So lots of positive things we can do with our voices. And I probably only mentioned a few just now. How about this question? What harm can we cause with our voices? Because voices are wonderful things and they could do many wonderful things. However, occasionally, sometimes we do use our voices in ways that can harm or hurt. So just stop for a minute and pause the video and have a conversation in your classes about the harm we can cause with our voices and the things that perhaps we shouldn't be doing that we sometimes do with our voices. Okay, so I wonder what you came up with in your discussions. The pictures might well have helped. So arguing and shouting, like the first picture you can see, which looks like possibly a brother and a sister who really aren't getting on very well. I wonder what's going on in that second picture. It looks like whispering, perhaps making mean comments, talking about somebody maybe behind their back. That's harm that we can cause with our voices. So we can say and do unkind things, can't we? And when we're saying unkind things, that can often cause huge amounts of harm, and people don't always forget the things that are said to them. But what about in school? What other harm can we cause with our voices? Well, we can disturb people, can't we? I've spoken to some classes recently about how we can disturb people around us, perhaps disturb people working in the offices, or disturb our neighbours with unnecessary shouting and yelling. That can cause harm. That can cause harm to your own learning if you're talking all the time rather than focusing on your learning. So voices are really powerful things, and they can be brilliant. They can help you learn, they can help you develop good friendships, they can help you have positive relationships, and they can be really harmful. They can harm your relationships, and they can harm your learning, and they can disturb other people and cause quite a big impact. And our Dojo Drive and our Marble Mission focus on our use of voices this week. So what does all this mean for us in school? Well, I think first and foremost, it's really important to always think about speaking kindly. Our words influence our actions and create the world around us. So let's just think about the words we use and the way we use our voices to speak kindly to other people. But thinking specifically about our Dojo Drive, we want you to be thinking about using your voices to get involved in discussions, to actively participate. That doesn't mean shouting out the first thing that comes into your mind. That's not active participation. That's just rudeness when you're just shouting. But thinking about what you want to say and being willing to get involved, taking responsibility for your own learning by either getting your hand up or showing your response, for example, when we show whiteboards, and then being ready to explain your thinking when the teacher asks you to. Not hunching your shoulders and saying you don't know, but getting involved and really taking responsibility for your own learning by getting involved in discussions and being willing to participate. Don't just leave it up to one or two. Make sure you're the person really getting involved and see those dojo points coming in. So that's one aspect of using our voice really positively and productively, getting involved in our learning, actively joining in discussions and not just leaving it up to other people. I was talking to Miss Lee about this, our Dojo Drive on Friday, and it reminded me of when I was at school. You might not realise I felt like this, but when I was at school, I would often sit and sometimes not put my hand up, even though I knew the answer. Why do people do that, do you think? Why do you think that even though I thought I knew the answer, I didn't put my hand up? Well, I was quite shy, and I would often worry I would be wrong. Even though I thought I knew it, I didn't always have the confidence to put my hand up, just in case I got it wrong. I wonder what would have happened if I got my hand up a little bit more. Would it have mattered if I was wrong? Does it matter if you make mistakes? I don't think it does. And actually, if people do get it a little bit wrong, then it actually really helps the teacher to understand where maybe you need a little bit more teaching. Not just you, but other children in the class. So be brave, push yourself and get that hand up. Our Marble Mission is to use kind and quiet voices. Now, I don't mean use a voice that's so quiet that when you're actively participating, nobody can hear you. But there are times around the school where we've heard really very loud voices, particularly when I'm sitting in my office and I'm in meetings or I come out into the corridor. Sometimes I can hear some very loud voices in the hall. Or I've heard some very loud voices last week when we were coming in from playtime. And those quiet voices, those loud voices, we want the quiet voices, but the loud voices are really disruptive to the smooth running of our school. So when people are shouting unnecessarily and talking more loudly than needed, it disturbs other people's learning. And that's not fair. That's not fair on the children who are learning. It's not fair on the teachers who are teaching to have their lessons interrupted by people who are not thinking about how they're using their voices. And in our school, I would like us to all be considerate of each other. So when we're coming in from the playground, And I was talking to year 5 and 6 about this last week. I don't expect you to be silent, but as you're walking across the playground, you need to just quieten your voice down, get yourself ready for learning. And then when you come into the building, that's when the voices go off, because we could be disturbing other people if we're making lots of noise. And you all know that when we're walking around the school, coming from one place to another, that we have our voices off, so we're not disturbing the classes who are learning. What about in the hall? I wonder what's an appropriate noise level in the hall. Well, I wonder whether it should be different from anywhere else. But somehow we seem to have quite a big din in the hall, particularly at lunchtime. I was thinking about this. I know we haven't been able to go out to eat out for quite some time because of the lockdown. But I'm sure many of you have experienced, if not all of you, have experienced going out to eat in a cafe or a restaurant, even if it's McDonald's. I'm sure we've all gone out and eaten somewhere. If you were going to go into McDonald's or Pizza Express or one of the places that you go with your family to have something to eat, would you go and start shouting? Would you start laughing so loudly that everybody was turning around to look at you? I don't think you would. Would you sit in silence? Would you say, no talking allowed in here? No, you wouldn't do that either, would you? So you wouldn't go into McDonald's and start yelling, and you wouldn't go into McDonald's and start and be silent the whole time. But what you would do is just have a sensible voice where you'd be chatting away to your family. And that's what I think we should need to have in the hall at lunchtimes, is a sensible chatting voice, not talking unnecessarily loudly, but neither do I expect you to sit in silence, because that's not realistic. And neither is it necessary. I wonder about PE lessons. Well, it's still learning time. So what are the noise levels in your classrooms? Do you all shout at one another in your lessons? If it was a maths lesson or an English lesson or a phonics lesson or a geography lesson or a history lesson or a science lesson, would you all be shouting at one another? No, I don't think you would. Would you be in silence? Sometimes. Would you be talking quietly to your learning partner? Possibly, yes. It depends on the task, doesn't it? But what we're noticing is that quite often when classes are in the hall, and it's not all classes, but some see it as an opportunity to be unnecessarily loud. It's learning time, and we want to hear learning voices. And that means not shouting and yelling. You wouldn't do it in other lessons, so please don't think it's necessary when you're doing an indoor, calm, focused PE lesson. Okay, so we're going to be looking to be able to give marbles. The best situation is that your class are in PE and I don't even notice because I don't hear you. And there are some classes that come and do PE and I never knew they were there because it was so calm and quiet. And there are some classes that I know full well are there because I do not control their voices. So make sure you are the class that are going in really quietly and calmly. Okay, make sure we're using our voices for the good this week. It's all what every adult's going to be looking out for. So really focus on that. Hope you have a good weekend, a good week, not a weekend. We've only just had a weekend. Have a good week, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. Bye-bye for now.